Hello and welcome to the Channel 5 News. I am Idona John Baptist. Coming up, now more than ever, the use of electrical generators is prevalent due to the lack of electricity nationwide. "52 days after the most devastating storm left the entire island without power, just about 3% of homes are back on the power company's electrical grid. For some, it's not a bother right now since they have power driven by generators. The Independent Regulatory Commission is responsible for registering all generators in Dominica. If you own a generator, you may be required to have a generating license from the IRC. Francis Paul is the IRC's regulations manager. What's the process for getting authorization to operate a generator?
Well, the Act 31, Section 31 of the Act, the Electricity Supply Act 206, Act 10, very clearly say the requirements under which somebody will get a license. If you operate in a generator of 20 kilowatts or more, it's not connected to the grid, you would have to get a license. But if also you're interconnected to the grid, you also need a license. But if you have a generator just for self-generation, lower than that, you really don't need a license. Yeah, but the procedure for getting a license, you would have to come to the IRC, fill an application form, would have to put a notice for any objections in the papers, and after this you would get a license. Okay. It's not a difficult process at all.
Getting the license would serve what purpose?
Well, actually the license forces you to ensure that it's safe, because we would have the electrical division to have that tested to make sure you follow all the necessary standards.
If one does not have a license, is there a penalty to that?
No, even though you don't require a license, the IRC would want you to register the generator with IRC so that we know who has generators, and because we also have the responsibility to make sure that any electricity generation is safe for the public as well. If you have a license with the IRC, the electrical division would have to make sure the installation is proper.
Dominica Electricity Services Limited has also observed the marked increase in the use of generators.
Dominic is not responsible for generators in terms of persons energizing their homes through generators. That was originally done before the storm through the IRC. I know a lot of persons have generators on, but we just want to ensure that, persons, when they connect in the generators, to ensure that they disconnect from the Dominic load slide. Some persons just turn off their main switch. That may not be enough, because, you never know, somebody has put in on a generator, the main switch may be on and they're not aware. So we just asking persons to disconnect the line which is going to the meter itself. So they must disconnect that line to ensure that you disconnect from Dominic load slide. And so, because if you have that on, or you have your main switch on, it means that the power is flowing back into the line. Power is going to flow back into the line, and it means that somebody may be passing on the road, our linesmen, our workers may be in that area, and the lines may have power, and somebody could get hurt.
The IRC shares Domlec's concerns on running a generator on the power company's grid.
We have to be mindful of safety. We noticed quite a few persons have generators and they just connect it straight to the grid without any form of protection or isolation. This is something we don't encourage, because that can cause backfeed into the line and electrocute somebody or Domlec. So people have to be mindful of that. You have to either have an isolator to disconnect from the grid whenever you have a generator on.
Up next, the second Bailey Bridge project since Hurricane Maria is well on its way to being completed at Castle Comfort. When we visited the project last Saturday on Community Day of Service, the project supervisor said the expectation was for the installation of the Bailey Bridge to have been completed by Tuesday. On Thursday, one lane was opened to motorists. Barbadian firm NSG Management and Technical Services Limited has stepped in to assist to connect roads that were cut off or bridges that collapsed during the hurricane. Forbawa was their first project after the hurricane, but NSG is not new to working in Dominica. Following Tropical Storm Erica in 2015, the company installed Bailey bridges at Dalis, Battley, Makoshui and Point Round in the north. The $18 million Roseau West Bridge project is also NSG's work. On the Castle Comfort side, there is still more casting of concrete to be done on one section of the bridge so that traffic can be allowed on both lanes. An engineer on site told us that all of that will be completed next week and the bridge will be fully opened. The project supervisor, Richard Harrington, said the government has hired the company to install 9 Bailey bridges on island. Part of their work entailed pulling out fiber cables from underground and reinstalling them on the bridge so that they are free from water.
From here, the next project will be Botica, and then I believe after that we're looking at Tabari River and possibly EC Low Block, depending on what is more critical, and the government usually gives us their priorities of what they want next. And then later down the road we'll be doing White River, Geneva, and some other bigger earthworks where you're building a lot of concrete abutments. So it's not just the bridge, there's a lot of concrete and earthwork that goes on after. So our rush is to get the bridges up, and then once the traffic's flowing, we can always come back and finish the concrete work, so it's not an inconvenience for the public.
A stern warning has once again been issued to the public to desist hunting wildlife as that vulnerable population recovers from the trauma of Hurricane Maria. Andrea Louis has that story.
Forest officials are reporting that while a large percentage of Dominica's forests has been devastated by Hurricane Maria, they are encouraged by the number of trees flourishing in the aftermath of the hurricane. Forest officer with responsibility for monitoring and research, Stephen Dura, told Channel 5 News that while a severe blow was dealt to the forest and wildlife, the division is optimistic that both populations will thrive once again.
It has been a devastating blow to the biodiversity, to our natural environment, natural vegetation. A large percentage of our forest has been destroyed, damaged. But yet there's still a very large percentage of trees still standing. Some of it are already flushing new leaves, and in some cases are already flowering. There's species that are already flowering. So I guess it's just nature responding. Nature has ways and means of taking care of itself, and that is exactly what is happening. In a quick time, maybe in the next 2 years or so, we will see a big difference, and sometimes, or maybe, it will be at a point where we might just be saying that we never got, struck by a hurricane. So I think the point is really, Maria really, hit us a devastating blow, and the forest suffered, the wildlife has really suffered. You can see it on the species, birds in particular, struggling. Most of the animals are struggling. Some of the animals are still disoriented, and so they are in search of food, foraging, looking for stuff to forage. And a lot of people are seeing animals in their backyards, on their farms, and everywhere on the side of the road, really struggling. So it is a point where we're at a point where we have to understand what has happened. A lot of the animals are vulnerable, very vulnerable at this point in time. And so we need to help as much as possible. We need to help in terms of providing some food if we can. I'm doing a lot of that, and there are lots of persons who are doing that. There are persons who picked up animals, parrots, and brought to us. We commend them for that. And so we would like a lot of the other persons who are seeing wildlife struggling, who can facilitate, who can support. We are receiving support from outside as well, from other organizations, conservation organizations and so on, and there's a lot that is happening. So we are grateful for everything, but it is something that we just need to understand, that the animals at a stage where they are vulnerable, and we should not take advantage.
A lot of people look forward to the month of October for the hunting season. Now, given that we just went through a Category 5 storm, or the Category 5 hurricane went through us, what is the message to people now who, want to hunt these wildlife?
Well, we are sorry that, this is the situation. Really and truly, we really wish that was not the case. But as a matter of fact, usually from October 1st until December 31st, that is the open hunting and fishing season, when the hunting is and fishing season is declared open to allow the persons to take certain species, with a permit. Forestry did made a recommendation to cabinet for the opening of the season, and so Maria really brought, a halt on this process, and so it is sad. But obviously we are not in a position to allow the taking of any animals now. We have to understand that is our culture, that is our heritage, and if we want to in future, enjoy, continue to enjoy this heritage, we need to provide some form of protection. And so we have to understand that the animals are not in a state for us to take, to utilize. Although usually during such periods, people resort to, surviving on natural resources. And so I'm sure there are one or two persons who, who are out there hunting. And I would like to call on these persons to tell them that the animals are really in a state where we should allow them to come back to a point where they will, reproduce and, care for their young, and to have a population at a level where we are able to harvest again.
You mentioned earlier that the animals, the wildlife, they're in a vulnerable state right now. How would you say is the cooperation of the public in reporting these animals to the division, or even bringing in injured animals or the animals on a whole to the division?
Well, we've had a lot of reports, a lot of concerns. A lot of people are calling me, meeting me, talking to me, and even offering assistance in terms of what it is they can do to provide food, even from outside of Dominica. But a lot of local people are concerned about the state of wildlife and what it is they're observing, what it is they're seeing. They, where animals, they're seeing animals. They're now seeing parrots in places that they never saw parrots before, And people are seeing parrots in the backyard, probably have a few fruit trees, guavas, whatever. And the parrots are right there. Parrots are on the ground, So this really tells you what the situation is. The animals, they are all disoriented. They're all in search of food, shelter. And so we really need to commend the persons who have, take animals from out there that they feel were injured and weak and so on, and brought them to us. We have a number of animals there that we're taking care of, and we want to commend the people who have done that. And we want to, thank everybody who are sharing their concerns, who are concerned about our wildlife, concerned about the forest as well. Our forest is very important to us in many aspects, watershed to provide us with, potable water and the rest. So there are lots of people who are concerned about, what has happened to Dominica, and, they look forward to seeing, the country looking, back like what it used to be. It will happen. It is going to happen. We just have to do what we need to do, is to give the forest a chance. We would not like to see, when we're having reports of bushfires, forest fires as well. I know that people are burning stuff, and so we're asking persons when they set fires, to do it in a controlled manner. And so we just have to, give everything some time. Give the forest, time for it to do what it needs to do. It's already responding. You can see, if you look right there, you'll see the golden shower right there flowering, So I think the nature is going to respond and do what it has to do. And so we need to allow that process to just take its course. And so we would like people to be mindful that they should support us, and cooperate with us in some of the activities and some of the things that we are asking not to do and so on, and give the forest a chance, give the animals a chance, and let nature just take its course. We will see parrots coming back in big numbers. We will see all the smaller bird species coming back in big numbers. The game wildlife, once they're given a chance to do what they have to do, I think we will be back on track.
Mr. Dira, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
And we just heard from Forest Officer with responsibility for monitoring and evaluation, Mr. Stephen Dira, on the department's efforts at helping to restore the wildlife population of the nature island, Dominica. This is Andrea Louie reporting for Channel 5 News.
Education authorities not sidetracked by the impact of Hurricane Maria in preparation for national and regional exams. Kenny Williams has more.
Following the passage of the September 18 hurricane, the issue of student education has been an area of concern, especially since some of the learning institutions have been used as hurricane shelters. Channel 5 News spoke with Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, who weighed in on the matter and says her department is speaking with the relevant authorities in that regard.
We have to work with the committees, the shelter committee, social services, and with housing to help these people, because we know that some of these people have lost everything. Some of these persons probably were in rented accommodation. So we have to work with those persons to get out of the shelter. So we are working with the relevant agencies to help these people to get on their feet so that we can have our schools, so that we can continue with our education system. But it's a challenge for us, and we know that it's a challenge for some of the people too. Okay, but certainly we are working with the different agencies in that regard.
We're hearing rumors of some teachers leaving without giving notice. Can you confirm more about whether or not that is true and how possibly it has affected school moving forward?
We do have information that teachers have left. The numbers are being compiled. As to the impact, we are still doing the assessment of that. So I am not able to give you directly some of the impact, because as I said earlier, some of the schools, they just have classes for the upper grades. Some of the schools have classes for all their students. So it's still difficult to assess the social and economic losses to the system because of that.
We have students who are taking national assessment exams and so on. Any concerns as it relates to their ability to produce when it comes to that time because of the hurricane?
We always say that it is not in the preparation for exams is over a period of time. So preparation for national exams is not just in the last few months of the year of the exam. It has to be done before. So we are hoping that the students can work on what they have learned before to apply it towards the exam, and in the short time we have, they maximize all their time to prepare for exams. We have no concern, we have very little concern about the time for exams for fifth formers. Fifth form exam preparation doesn't start in fifth form. It starts before. So I want to encourage students to make maximum use of the time they have now. And we want to encourage students who are in Form 5 to do the exams and take all the necessary, what is necessary to prepare for exams. We just want to use this opportunity. We know that we have lost students and staff members in the hurricane. So we want to just extend our sympathies to the schools where those persons are from. Their loss is our loss. We want to recognize these persons for their contribution they have made, especially the persons who worked in schools. We want to recognize them for their contribution that they made, and we want to just extend our sympathies to their co-workers and the families.
Meantime, following a visit to school sites in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria, 95% of equipment at institutions were either compromised or totally destroyed, even in the most secured areas where it was expected that minimal damage would occur. Flooding had damaged or destroyed the majority of equipment. A report from the ministry suggested total estimated equipment damage to be $4.1 million, with approximately 73% of that cost coming from damage to desktops and laptops. Reporting for Channel 5 News, I am Kenny Williams.
Since Hurricane Maria, over 520 deliveries of food, water and non-food items have been distributed to over 150 communities. But, as we are reminded in this report by Julian Morris, that relief must end at some point.
We're talking about over 1,000 tons of food and water distributed through the government system. Government has also partnered with the World Food Programme to distribute 376 metric tons of food to 40 communities. Over 40 communities have received rations based on their vulnerabilities, loss of livelihood and access to markets. To date, government has received 60 containers of relief supplies. The Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism, Karim Prevost, has also been charged with government's relief efforts.
Our focus for this week has been on vulnerable groups, so we have been working on distribution to the homes for the aged, to include the infirmary, grotto, chances, house of hope. We are also working with the Ministry of Social Services to complete a targeted distribution to the elderly through the Yes We Care program. We are also working with the Ministry of Social Services on distribution of supplies to foster care families and shelters.
The actual process of distributing government relief supplies has also come under scrutiny and attracted criticism.
We've been working with a combination of groups and agencies. We've tried our best to work with the local authorities. As you would understand, not all communities have local authorities, and I've learned quite a lot during this process. We started off using the census, and I will tell you that our distribution was based on communities utilizing the census and not based on constituencies. But even in the process of utilizing the census, we realized that there are a number of communities that are not represented or that are not listed individually in the census that would have called us on the hotline. So let's say there's a community between Bioche and Dublin, and perhaps they may not have been covered in Bioche and Dublin. So what we've had to do over the last few weeks is identify individuals, focal points and groups in various areas that could assist us with the distribution process. And as I have said before at previous briefings, we have really been getting this distribution done through a number of processes, utilizing a number of people and a number of groups. In most cases, we are working with the local authorities. Where there are no local authorities, there are some community groups, there are improvement groups, disaster committees. In some cases, there are no improvement groups, there are no disaster committees, so we've had volunteers from the communities who have come forward. There are some communities that are split up in certain areas, so what we've done is sectionize those communities, and we have had focal points in each of those areas. I can tell you Castle Comfort, for example, does not have a local authority, they do not have a disaster committee, so we've been able to identify individuals who have come forward in various sections of Castle Comfort. They've zoned out the area, and then we provided support to them through that system. And this is what we've done in a number of other areas. There are some communities where we have not been able to have a proper system within the community. So from the distribution side, we have utilized our own transportation and also the volunteers that are assigned to us, including the Jamaica Defense Force, to do door-to-door deliveries in these areas.
The conversation is now shifting from response to recovery, meaning at some point this dependency on relief supplies must end if we are to return to a state of normalcy. Disaster risk management specialist Cecil Shillingford told government's daily press briefing on Thursday the time is coming when the relief will end.
At one point we have to take a determination at what stage that the relief ends. As I said earlier, the relief cannot go on forever. So at some point, the government has to decide, look, we're going to stop the relief to all and sundry at this point, and we will continue looking at vulnerable groups. So you have elderly people, you have people already assisted by the state will continue to assist them. You have children, you have institutions. So if you are still receiving relief, it doesn't mean that because you're receiving relief, you just have to go on giving relief. If you say you're cutting the relief and relief is still coming in, then you provide them to institutions of the state like the hospitals, the prisons, the infirmary, and areas like that. So, I mean, I've been working in the region also, and I have gone to certain countries, and after a month I say to the authorities, you have to stop the relief, because if you don't stop it, you're going to cripple your economy in terms of your business community. I am one who indicated that for Tropical Storm Erica, we got too much relief, and we distributed too much relief until the private sector was screaming and they were about to collapse. So not because you continue to get relief that you should go distributing relief forever.
Julian Morris reporting for Channel 5 News.
This has been the Channel 5 News. Feel free to contact us at news@marpin2k4.com. On behalf of the production team, I am Idona John Baptist, and to all our viewers, thanks for watching. Join us tomorrow.